everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from July 17th, 2020, and I'm recording this on January 14th, 2021. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. This week we had a lot of overlap between the lists. We got 15 books to look at. So as compared to normally we've been having a lot of 17, 18 book weeks. But this week only 15 books that made both between the two lists. As always, we're looking back at these books to try to understand what factors made them hot and how those factors have sustained and kept those books hot or had them drop back, and whether maybe a little patience would have done us any good. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's list. And we're going to start with our one kind of option news book, and that is Usagi Yojimbo #1. And this is the first solo title of Usagi, that Albedo #2, I forget now, is way out of price range for most people. So this was kind of the book people were going after, and this was because Netflix announced they'd optioned the rights and they were going to do a Usagi show. Only it wasn't this version. They were going to do like a descendant of him, and it was going to be set in space, and yeah, it seemed a little odd, but that's what they were going with, or at least that was the rumor. Either way, back then, raw copies of this book had jumped up to $50. 9.8 was hitting $400. And this book has continued to climb. I think it was probably a little underrated. Like I said, the first appearance is out of reach for most people, so people have started kind of targeting this instead. Raw copies now range from 40 to 100. 9.8s are going 450 to 600. So yeah, this one has continued to go up. A very solid book, very cool book, cool character. Next, we're going to have kind of an error/cover that we're going to talk about, and that is Faithless #2, or Faithless 2 #2. And this is the Tula Lotte erotic variant, and this is they've been bagging all these erotic Faithless comics with the erotic covers. Only this one, you could still see the erotic cover through the bag, so the bag didn't actually block it like it was supposed to. Whether or not you believe they actually did this on purpose or not, I don't know. Either way, back then this was going for $20, this Air comic. Now it's mostly like a $5 to $10, occasionally $15 book for the Air version in the bag. So it's down. It's an I'll be back. Again, I'm not sure how much of an actual error this was, or if this was just something to stir some interest, but hasn't really sustained too much value, but still going for more than cover price. So, our other cover of the week is Spider-Woman #2, the Frizzen 1 in 50 variant, and this was a super hot cover coming out the gate. As you can tell, I'm a big Frizzen fan. I love this cover. I did not get it when it was coming out, and it immediately upon release was going for $125 to $175 for this 1 in 50, so triple ratio, which is a big money for ratio. But now this is more of a $50 to $60 book for raw copies. 9.8, there's only been one recent sale of a 9.8. It only went for $100, so this one has fallen way back. This is a bit of a trap, which is a good thing for me because I might actually track down a copy now that it's back down at these kind of prices. But yeah, so this one did not sustain the high values it was getting upon release, but still a very cool cover and still one I might try to add to my collection at some point. With that, we're going to move into DC movie news. So we're kind of skipping our normal comic buzz. That's because almost more than half the list this week is comic buzz stuff. And more than half of those are related to one series, but we'll get into that in a minute. But our DC movie TV stuff first up is Gotham Central #1. And this is basically that even though we just recently had a Gotham show that was kind of focused on the police side of things, HBO Max is talking about making a Gotham Central show that'll be a little more. The rumors are that it's going to be a little more toward this comic, a little more of a police procedural than whatever Gotham was. And back then, caused this book to jump up to a $20 book. 9.8 was hitting $75. No recent 9.8 sales, but it's still going $10 to $30 for raw copies. So it's been pretty actually steady for raw copies. Obviously, you can get it for a little bit less than what it was, but occasionally it's going for more. So kind of still in that same range. A cool series. I've only ever read volume 1 of this, but definitely a really good series that you should check out if you've never read it. Next, we have JSA Secret Files and Origins #1, the first Atom Smasher, and this is basically had to do with casting news that this character was being cast for the Black Adam movie. Back then, this jumped up to a $30 to $60 book. This is another trap. This one's down to a $5 to $20 book. Yeah, just hasn't. Now the movie's coming. It might jump back up if the character makes an impact in the movie, but yeah, this one definitely has not sustained that $30 to $60 kind of range. With that, we're going to move into our one MCU book this week. Yes, that's right. Only one MCU-related book this week, which is pretty rare. And this is a book that was on the list last week, and it's Inhumans #5, the first Yelena Belova, the second Black Widow. Obviously, we know she's making her first appearance in the Black Widow movie, and all the reports are that she's going to be the Black Widow in the MCU going forward. Back then, it was going 9.8 hit $400. Raw copies were going in at $50 to $60 range. Raw copies are still going in that similar range, actually 40 to 80, so it's a fairly wide range on this one, but yeah, they're still in that same area. 9.8s are down a little bit, $300 to $400, but that was kind of the peak. So I would overall say this has been pretty steady over the last 6 months. Right now, they're still hoping to get Black Widow out in May, I think. Let's hope we finally get to see this movie, that we get things under control and we can actually get to a theater and see this movie. At least that is my hope. With that, we are going to move into Comic Buzz. So, yeah, we had 6 books that weren't. Everything else through 15 is. So, 9 Comic Buzz books this week. And first up, we have Wildcats #1. This is the first appearance of all the Wildcats character, including Grifter. And this basically hit the list because of news that Grifter was going to appear in the Batman series. They actually had a solicitation. He was on one of the covers. So it kind of sparked renewed interest, a lot of sales, but there's literally like 1 million copies of this book. So it was still only going for like $5, but Tom and then put it on the list because there was a bunch of sales. Still basically that $5 book at 9.8 of this runs you about $60. Yeah, this is pretty steady, a lot less sales, but pretty steady in terms of price because the price didn't really jump. Next, we have Teen Titans 12, the first appearance of Batman Who Laughs, and this had everything to do with the start of the Death Metal series coming out. Back then, 9.8s were hitting $5 to $5.50. Now, a 9.8 will run you $5.50 to $6.50, so this has continued to creep upward. Raw copies will cost you $80 to $120. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this character, but this is one that has definitely hit the mark with fans. It has been a hot book really almost consistently since it came out. And yeah, it's continued to creep up through this Death Metal series. It's just, I think the last issue just finally came out here a week or so ago. So yeah, this one's maintained all its momentum and is continuing to go for really good prices. Next, we have The Last Ronin, Ashcan, and that was basically kind of a preview of this Last Ronin series. It was going for $35 to $70 back then, and there was a lot of hype around this series because this was kind of a potential future with just where there's only one of the turtles left. He's using all the weapons, and this Ashcan was going for big money, going for good money. Wasn't a lot of these out there. It was kind of oversized, and it's still basically $40 to $60 range. So another one that I'd say has been pretty steady over the last 6 months. The actual #1 has come out. It's going for good money. There's been a lot of interest in the series. I think #2 is finally coming out here in another week or so, pretty soon, I think. The number two issue is finally coming out. But this has been very popular, and like everything Turtles in the last year it's maintained and been pretty hot. Our last book, not related to a single series, is Strange Academy #1. I won't go through all the first appearances in this one, but this hit the list not because of any actual MCU rumors or Disney Plus show rumors or anything else. It's just a series with a bunch of first appearances, kind of a whole new group of characters were introduced in this, and people just think it would be a great MCU show or a Disney Plus show. All these teenagers learning magic. Everyone's just kind of on board that this would be an awesome series if they did it. Back then it jumped up to $25 to $30. 9.8s were going for $200. And this is another one that's continued to kind of creep up. Right now, raw copies of the A cover will run you $60 to $80. 9.8s will run you $2 to $250. So this one continues to kind of climb, continues to be hot. A lot of spec that this might eventually become something. My guess is they're probably right. I just think it's going to be a while. But yeah, so that is Strange Academy #1. And now we're going to move in. We got 5 books left. They're all related to one series, and that series is Venom. And it has everything to do with the announcements about the King of Black and everything going on with Donny Cates. And all the buzz around Null and Donny Cates and King of Black and all of this stuff. First on our list, we're just going to go in numerical order, is Venom #3, the third print, which is the first appearance of Null, plus a cover appearance of Null. And back then, a 9.8 hit $900, which is just a crazy price for this book, at least in my opinion. And that really hasn't sustained that, despite us being in the middle of the King of Black event right now. This book has fallen back a little bit. 9.8 should go for $450 to $550, which is still really, really good for a book that's not, a little over 2 years old at this point. Is it even 2 years old at this point? Yeah, a little over 2 years old. But and raw copies of this go for $200 to $300. So you could argue this is a trap, or at least compared to that $900 value, but still a great book. Still going for really good money. Just $900 was a way high overreach, at least at this stage for this book. Next, we have Venom #4, which is the origin of Null. Back then, this was a $30 to $50 book. 9.8s were going for around $170. Now it's a $30 to $40 book, so down slightly on the raw side, but pretty steady there. But definitely down on the 9.8 side, down to $100 to $125 book for 9.8. So stay down. Definitely an I'll be back. Like I said, everything Null has been super hot for the last 8 or 10 months. And it's still doing pretty well, even if it is down a little bit. Next, we have Venom #9, the first full appearance of Dylan Brock. Back then, it was hitting $25 for raw copies. 9.8s were going for $200. This is another kind of steady-ish book. Raw copies are actually up. They're going $40 to $70 now. 9.8s are actually down. They're more $150-ish to $200 than $200 plus. So kind of put steady in there. Like the gap between raws and 9.8s have closed, but it's definitely still a book of interest. Still Dylan, I think, is going to play an important role in the finale of this King of Black, and I think that's what everybody's still specking on. Next, we're going to move into a couple of Venom books that maybe haven't done quite as well overall. Venom first is Venom #25. This has a cameo appearance of Virus, which was supposed to be this new symbiote everybody was hyped about before we found out the truth, that it was just kind of a repackaged Matt Gargan of the original Scorpion was just being kind of repackaged like this. Back then, it was a $15 to $25 book. Now it's a $5 to $10 book. 9.8 can be had for $30 to $60, which is that low end is barely more than what you'd pay to slab it yourself. Definitely down. Maybe an I'll be back, but yeah, I'm not sure there's going to be much interest in Virus long term unless something changes. And the last book is Venom #26, the first full appearance of Virus. another one that was going for $10 to $15 right out of the gate. Now it's more of a cover price to $15 book. So you could argue it's steady because it's still going up to the $15, but it's definitely not went up, and it's not one of the hotter books among that Venom run. 9.8 again can be had for $30 to $50. So yeah, definitely a couple of I'll be backs to end the list. So that is this week's list. Like I said, we had 5 books related to Venom, and this had everything to do with news about the King in Black series. So but we had a few other books on here that were pretty good. Still got that Inhumans number 5. That's going strong for a second week in a row. Strange Academy is definitely a book that people have continued to have interest in. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Hope you got something out of this, and we will catch you next time.